Call this meeting to order. Will staff please do the roll call?
Morgan White.
Present.
Andrew Stump.
Here.
Jessica Lemcool.
Here.
Luke Westalker.
Here. Did we have approval of old minutes?
They're in the packet.
I move to approve the minutes,
Are there,
if you're ready for that.
I'll second.
yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we'll now move on to staff report.
Good evening, SAC. A few updates. One of the mayor and city council goals is to develop sustainable practices, renewable energy on city facilities. The city has broken ground on 2 new fire stations. We're essentially building an identical model twice at 2 different locations, replacing 2 old fire stations. Those 2 fire stations already have geothermal wells drilled on them, or they're finishing the drilling this week. They will be geothermal powered fire stations. That will include the living quarters and the offices. The bays will not be geothermal because they wouldn't be cooled anyway. And also, when those doors go up, they lose the entirety of the heated space, and it needs to be reheated quickly. But all of the living quarters and offices will be geothermal heated and cooled. We also anticipate sizing solar for those facilities after they're built. Depending on how the finances work out, we may include that in the project, or we may do that a year later after collecting utility bills. We'll see how that goes, but we will be putting solar on those roofs, on those new roofs. So it'll be geo-heated, cooled, and solar powered. So this is, I think, a great accomplishment for the city, and I think it'll be a nice case study for other people building fire stations in Illinois in the future. Mm-hmm. They evaluated geothermal in the floor of the bay, and there were reasons, I don't recall the reasons, but there were reasons why that did not get included. I don't think anyone contemplated geothermal in the sidewalk and driveway, but yeah, they ended up not going with the floor either. I don't know if that's in the design or not. Right. Right. There's a word for that. Des soupier. There's a word for that. I'll ask about that. Yeah. I don't know if adding that at this stage even, I don't know if that's enough of a demand to even change the design or not, but I'll ask. Still on geothermal, our bulk geothermal purchase program has secured 13 tons and across 3 systems. There is a ton of interested properties out there in our program this year. They're just converting to sign contracts slower this year. So that's where we're at now. Hopefully we're gonna get a few more signed up before the program is over. We have some updates on our landfill solar development. Last night at Committee of the Whole, we had approval, or the initial approval, we'll be back at City Council next Monday, of an extension of the lease option for our solar developer. They have essentially everything prepared excepting the state incentives for the solar development. we're on the wait list for those incentives. So I'm hopeful that we'll be off the wait list and into an incentive program in the next year. But we're going to extend that lease option to accommodate that wait list. More on solar, our bulk solar purchase program has sold 218 kilowatts across 22 systems. There was a number of other projects, proposals that were, days away from being signed, so this number's probably out of date already. We do anticipate reaching that final price benchmark of 250 kilowatts of capacity. So that's going well. U-Cycle curbside and multifamily contracts, which are 5-year contracts and sometimes renewed for or extended for another 2 years, which they have been this time, so 7 years, will be coming to an end in March of 2025. Staff expect to rebid those contracts in the 4th quarter of this year, so giving plenty of time for a new vendor to make arrangements, if there is a new vendor, plenty of time to make arrangements for that service. So that's a big deal. That's several $100,000 of spend that we'll be rebidding.
Are there other companies around the area, or? Okay.
Yeah. So there is, I think maybe 6 licensed residential curbside licensed waste haulers in Urbana. So if you have a waste hauling license, you can do the U-Cycle program. You can bid on the U-Cycle service. U-Cycle will also be participating and supporting a household hazardous waste collection event coming up August 17th. That's one of those events that are quite expensive, and they happen when the state pays for the disposal portion of the event, disposal costs.
On that one, is it possible to have have the folks who are working towards getting enough funding together to build a local household hazardous waste facility included with like a, donate now kind of thing for people who are going through? Is that, I don't know if that's like even allowable, since it's, I would hope so.
I don't think that they're at that stage of the fundraising effort anyway.
Okay.
Those kind of capital campaigns start with the big donors first and then move down from there.
Got it. So maybe just information?
That's
would
possible.
be, or like a poster?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, are they? You can get on the wait list. Okay. There will also be an electronics recycling event hosted, supported by U-Cycle and other partners, October 12th. And America Recycles Day will be celebrated with some events November 2nd. I'll take any questions you may have.
Yeah, do the fire stations also include energy storage, or are they using the grid as the storage?
No energy storage on site.
Okay.
That's not probably entirely true. There will probably be a diesel generator backup, which is energy storage. But those, hardly ever get used. They're exercised to keep it oiled, and the power goes out every few years for an hour. It's just not that big of an impact.
Is this America Recycles Day? So this is just like an annual thing, because I'm reading about like the art of glass blowing. Like that just seems like a cool outreach event.
Yeah, America Recycles Day is a national thing every year, and the recycling coordinators in the community try to put together some interesting activity that will highlight recycling.
Does Urbana have other like upcycling things like that?
There used to be a private business that did that. I'm not sure if they're in business anymore, though. Anyone remember their name? The Idea Store. Are they still around? Okay, they moved.
Yeah.
Okay, great, great.
But I just wasn't thinking of that as upcycling, because there's also Restore with Habitat for Humanity.
Mm.
One question that I have about like the bids for the recyclers, do they all recycle the same way? Like, are some of them better at making more things recycled, whereas others like throw more in the trash? Because I know that that's probably like, we all know that that's happening.
That's a
you
great
know.
question. So our bid specifies the materials that have to be collected, and it's the materials that are in your brochure. And we tend to say we recycle glass or aluminum or plastic, but that's not quite how recycling works. We really recycle commodities, so things that are mass produced and are all essentially identical. So, a soda bottle is a soda bottle. Doesn't matter the flavor that was inside or the brand. They're all about the same shape, size, color, materials. And so, that's a commodity versus sort of a boutique item. So there might be something you have that is made of plastic that is a different shape, size, color, and material, and you think, well, this is plastic, so I can recycle it. That's not the case. We're really, to make the system efficient, because ultimately residents are paying for recycling. There's not enough recoverable value to pay all the costs. So that's why there's a U-cycle tax. So even though the vendor is recovering some value by sorting, baling, and selling off that material to be reused, it doesn't cover the collection, sorting, baling. So they take that money, plus they take the money that we residents pay them through the contract, and they make a business out of it. But to keep costs down to something even manageable, we recycle things that are mass-produced, easily seen and sorted. So we put that in our contract, and we have to talk to the industry to get a reality check on things, right? On what's really recyclable. So, for instance, in the past, we've had plastic 6-pack rings. They're not really getting recycled. We put it in there in the past because we wanted them to be, but it's not really happening. So we have to be realistic about what we can pay to get done. That said, some facilities use more labor, some facilities use more technology in the recycling. The markets are the same for everybody. The markets are what they are, and they ebb and flow. But we'll be specifying what's recycled, not so much how it's recycled. There is a goal of recovery. So I believe our contract states the goal to be 90% recovery of the materials that pass through the door. So 90% of what goes in the back of the truck, we want ultimately to be baled. And then the vendors are giving us reports on that. And so, that's what we're going to be driving them to. In the future, like I said, recycling markets ebb and flow. We will see if that continues to be a realistic goal.
Do they get close to 90%?
They have in the past.
I find this shocking, to be honest. Just with documentaries I've watched about recycling and like how, this salad container that's ubiquitous and they're everywhere, to your point, sometimes just isn't recycled because it's not the right number on the back, I that's shocking and good news. Also, I'm on that vein, I think probably, I know just from my encounters with other people, people throw dirty recyclables in the recycling. So they make that work too, I guess is a question that I have.
There's a level of contamination that's going to get something, sorted into the garbage pile rather than the recycle pile. It's good if people can give things a rinse so that they don't have a lot of food waste on them.
So mostly it's still getting close to 90%.
That's the reports we've received in the
Wow,
past.
that's mind blowing.
That are getting bailed.
And
Probably the biggest challenge is glass. I think we're actually pretty fortunate to have some outlets for glass in Illinois. We don't require, a detailed inspection of the vendor's books, but my presumption is they're getting little or nothing for the glass. Glass just nationwide is very difficult to recycle, to recover, to even have anyone take it for free.
I mean, in all honesty, of all the things, at least glass, like you put it on the ground and it's not gonna like leach out chemicals and stuff, so.
Yeah.
If it does get polluted, it's not like, killing the ocean or anything.
No.
So that's cool.
Glass,
I mean, at least it's not the plastic,
Exactly. In terms of harm reduction, glass is a lower concern because it's just sand. Mm-hmm.
Is there any way we can get the percentage once it gets to the recycling center? Because I worry that it's like 90%, and then what percent are they then landfilling?
We have not historically tracked that all the way through. I'll have to ask the recycling coordinator if there's other cities that do that, because now you're extending your reach of your procurement another vendor deep. Certainly in like the hazardous waste world, there's a manifest that goes, all the way to the end of the line. But something to contemplate is everything you ask for has a price. So we will pay for that if we think it's doable and someone will bid and agree to do it. It's going to come with a price. That's possible. The other consideration is if we got a number, do we have any control over changing it? I'm not sure. But let me talk to the recycling coordinator about that. At least we would know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It would be good to know, just like you think about spending money and energy on recycling it, baling it, and then if the bales are just going into the garbage, it's like,
Yeah.
because that's the fear, right? So we know 90% gets baled, but we don't really know that, like, it's not like really necessarily getting recycled. Yeah. Hey, single-use world. Ooh.
Kind of along those lines, if we could figure out what actually is getting recycled, is there any way we could like provide that to people in Urbana? Because I know there's the sheet that has everything that can be recycled, but that has a lot of things that when I look at it, I'm like, I don't think that product will likely get recycled. Like some takeout containers, it's like they will, but I don't know if they actually do. Or how you can like put plastic bags if you bundle them into the U-Cycle bins. Like, is that actually the best way to recycle those?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point to bring up. We are going to have to consider very carefully whether we're going to keep plastic single-use grocery bags in the program. We're talking to other vendors, and we're not sure that if we require that, we'll get any more than one bid. And then there's, anecdotally, it seems like we don't actually get that much of that material either. So we are considering whether we can even keep that in the bid.
On that vein, has any movement happened with the whole plastic bag discussion in Urbana?
So I think that's in mayor and council goals, right?
Yeah,
If we're not
that's
knowing,
next.
I'm just gonna be
Yeah.
the average Urbanite right now here.
And I'm just checking because,
That's what I was just looking at. It says
Yeah, it
pursue
is.
that bag tax. But the resolution that we had passed about investigating it is
so there's,
list of the city council mayor's goals.
Are there like any other questions on recycling, or do we want to move on to that new business?
Oh, because it's already on our, is it, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
no, it's a great question.
The email issue, I've been locked out of my emails.
No, you're fine.
So is there any unfinished business that we want to bring up first? Okay. Okay, we can then move on to new business, so the mayor and council goals discussion. So I just forwarded you all that memo that I sent to the city council and mayor. I meant to CC everyone on that, but essentially what I did was I took our meeting notes and tried to incorporate that into edits where I did like strategy 3.1, add this, and then replace these two things under strategy 3.3. So I believe in their accepted strategic goals, they accepted all of those edits, correct?
Sorry, I think they accepted all or most. I do remember this memo now. I thought you were referring to something recent. This is,
yeah.
this is a while back. Yeah, I think a lot of this did make it into the final.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to put them side by side to know for sure.
I'm doing that right now. Okay, they just changed the order, but okay, yeah, so 3.3D, pursue implementation of single-use plastic bag fee as recommended by SAC resolution number that. So our specific resolution is in their strategic goals for the next year or two.
I'm just looking at this memo, the 3.3 A, B, and C are all in there. I don't know that it's exactly the same phrase as what was finally installed, but the implement sustainability improvements, that might say, investigate implementation of those, and the create a grant program in there.
Yeah, I think they changed the implement sustainable improvements back to, or kept evaluate the financial feasibility, but they did add the, under 3.1 C and D, the full-time equivalent arbor tech and vehicle and green storm water management. So that's awesome. So Scott, how does this usually work with them using the strategic goals over the next few years?
Yeah, so there's, if you do the count, there is whatever the number is, say 25 goals there. The day after they pass that, the city doesn't go to work on all 25 all at once. They are essentially in order. They're in order of priority. And so leadership will direct staff to work on these as they come up in order and as there is capacity. So, and you asked about the plastic bag tax specifically. There hasn't been any direction yet that I know of to start working on that. I know that there was some talk about getting some folks in finance staffed up to support that.
If they are in order, it's the last sub-strategy and the last bullet point of that sub-strategy for 3. So is there anything we can do, not like to speed that up without putting in a bunch of extra time ourselves?
I think, I think what has to happen for that to get started is some staffing and having staff available specifically in the finance department to work on that. I imagine that it's very similar to the hotel motel tax, and that it's not a sales tax on every sale. It's a sales tax at certain businesses for certain things. So I imagine that the infrastructure to be built would be finance department related. So I think it's just a matter of getting that department staffed up and capacities made available for this additional new task.
And then looking at 3.3A, like evaluate the practical and financial feasibility of sustainability improvements in city facility capital projects. Can we use SAC in any way to like identify or help streamline some of those things? Be like, this is a project you should look into, or this is a facility that we recommend you investigate?
That one is actually fully in process. So I mentioned the 2 new fire stations. The GEO is already going in. There's every expectation to put solar on the roof. It's just a matter of when and which pot of money. We have a solar installation that should happen any day now on the 1.5-year-old city storage facility out at Public Works. And Ray Garcia at Public Works is already making plans for the next steps in our facilities master plan. And we talked, Ray and I talked this week about what the, sort of a sense of scale in terms of roof space and dollars to put solar on the refurbished Public Works campus at 706 South Glover. There may be an addition to a building or a new building. That's all to be determined by the architects and engineers. But we're already sizing up what it would require to power that whole stack of buildings. There's like 4 buildings that have been added on over time there, but to solar power that whole stack. So I think that's the point of mayor and council goals, is to bake these things in as our way of doing business in the future. And that's a great example of it. Every project is. We're not doing any GEO at the Public Works refurbishment because it's not a full rebuild. We're not starting from scratch, and the level of effort would just be enormous compared to the money that's been appropriated for it. But we are gonna. We're making plans to figure out what it takes to power all the electricity there with solar.
Are you also doing energy efficiency improvements in these city facilities?
Yeah, we're actually just for our back of the envelope solar math. We're expecting, a 15% improvement on energy efficiency with the remodeling.
And what about street lights? Are those LED already? Or I think there's only a few I thought that were shifted out to LEDs.
Anything new that goes up is LED. So I don't know if anything new will go up in that project, but anything new that goes up is LED. We are.
I mean away from the buildings, like just out on the streets, all those streets.
So we've got the energy efficiency conservation block grant money. That's all going to go to LED streetlight retrofits.
I remember us talking about this at a meeting like a ways back. Because remember we were talking about like the design of the street light. What was kind of what happened there? 2 different
parallel efforts. One is the engineers at Public Works have a project to, they've already done the inventory and understand what we have out on the street in terms of poles that need to be replaced very soon, different pole designs, as well as, the light fixture at the top of the pole. There's way too many designs out there. We need to streamline so that we don't keep that diversity of spare parts at Public Works. And then the lamp that's inside the fixture, that's one, and that's actually probably the most straightforward part of that effort. Separately is the lamp inside the fixture retrofit effort for the poles that are going to stay where they are for now. So that's something that we can get federal money for because there's an energy efficiency gain.
I think we talked about dark sky lights, which is already like standard for Urbana.
Yeah, we were looking at, in looking at all the fixtures that are available and the costs, we were looking at one that by the numbers was nearly dark sky. It didn't quite make it, but it's nearly dark sky and it looks good and very cost effective. And so I haven't heard anything about that project in a little while, but that's the last I heard about it.
Also, just on streetlights, I don't know if you're already pursuing the Ameren energy efficiency incentives, because you probably can qualify for those with the energy efficiency programs. Let me know if you want me to connect you to the person who's doing it on campus.
Sure.
I do have other questions in the about the goals.
So I have a quick one on the streetlights. So how soon will some of these things get implemented? Like, how soon could we schedule an update on this plan? Because, like, I would love to hear as soon as they start doing things.
An update on which plan? We talked about a couple.
Either of them, either the lamppost or the electronics, the interior.
So I can give you, then we meet again in 2 months. I can give you a status update on the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant funded streetlight project.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking more like, could we ever bring in someone at some point once like a bunch of this moves forward, like a presentation by someone, if that would be useful or interesting.
Okay.
But this is something I think about most days because there are 6 different types of street lamps around my block. So whenever I'm walking my dog, I'm just like, every single time I'm like, wow, each of these is different.
Are you considering bi-level lighting for any of the retrofits?
I don't think so.
If there's a parking lot that has a lot of, or a deck that is through the, like, is the parking deck over by the Iron Post, is it city-owned?
Yes.
The bi-level lighting in parking decks is very clearly, has a very quick payback, because in the evenings, so you cut it, if you're doing LED lights and you cut it down to 25%, you're only cutting the lighting by half, and that's when there's no motion, and then when there's motion, it pops up. And it has been recognized we were talking about it at the Big Ten and Friends for the university, but it was recognized as a way for actually a safety enhancement, because police officers or safety professionals who were maybe driving down the road, they can see where there's a section that's been lit up, but it's not going dark when there's no motion. It's just dropping to 25% power. And it was like 1 or 2 sensors, not all across the whole thing. It's just a setting.
Let me ask the electrician on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of them, and the parking lots that have them, which are just 2, I think, it is on each pole. So like on the First Street bike path, shared use path, that's by pole. So when you come up, it brightens up in front of you and stays bright behind you. And then it kind of follows you as you go down that mile. But in the parking decks, they do it not by like fixture, but sort of floor. So a couple floor, half a floor or something. And we also have some solar-powered light poles, but I don't think that it would be applicable from the city.
We have a couple here and there. They're essentially used where it's cheaper to do that than to run infrastructure, but not much.
Did you have other questions about the goals?
Yes, I wanted to ask about the grant program. So I thought we had talked in here, or maybe I heard it somewhere else, that it was already initiated kind of before these goals were completed. Initiated in terms of the staff discussions from was it Economic Development Department?
Grants Management.
Grants Management. So, and I'm sorry, because I forgot a lot of stuff recently, but have they come and spoken to SAC? Because when they're ready, I'd love to have them do a presentation about the grant program here.
So Braden Belcher, the grants management lead, was going to come, but then we didn't have quorum, and so he sent an email to SAC for feedback. And I just saw it. I'm struggling to find it right now, but if you're subscribed to the City of Urbana newsletter, there's an announcement in there about it. And he was also taking some feedback on program design from City Council last night.
So it's in the, like, a recent newsletter.
Yeah, today at 7:14 p.m.
Ooh, cool.
I'm looking for it right now. I know I saw it.
In the slides are May 13th is when Scott sent those.
And this is for the mini, like the environmental
Yeah.
project grants.
I just
Okay.
found it. It's Sustaining Urbana Neighborhoods, Sun.
Thank you.
Sorry, say again? Okay, great. Yeah.
Are there any more discussion on the goals or any other business? No? I can call the meeting to an end. Okay, meeting adjourned.